The Political Library Advisory Board at Columbia University awarded the Pulitzer Prize for Investigative Journalism to Woodward and Bernstein. Yet, it was Mark Felt who phoned Woodward, met with him several times, and provided him with all the important information. Woodward and Bernstein did not uncover the story. It was handed to them. Several of their stories used wording that mirrored the wording in the FBI report so closely that Patrick Gray knew there was a spy inside the Bureau. The Pulitzer community ought to have given the prize to Mark Felt. The break-in at the Watergate complex occurred on June 17, 1972, and the plumbers were caught by an early security guard. Former FBI agent G. Gordon Liddy and James McCord, an ex-CIA agent and former security director of the Committee to Re-elect the President, were convicted on January 30, 1973 for their parts in the break-in. They were convicted of conspiracy, bugging DNC headquarters, and burglary. 4 other men had already pled guilty, including E. Howard Hunt, a former CIA agent who had taken part in the failed Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba during Kennedy's administration. Meanwhile, the Washington Post, joined afterwards by the Johnny-come-lately New York Times and the rest of the media, portrayed the break-in at the Watergate complex as the biggest crime in the history of Washington. In fact, it was merely a burglary, a Class 3 burglary at that, and had absolutely no impact on the 1972 election. No one was injured, and the damage to the door was minor. Any case of jaywalking was more devastating to the nation than the Watergate break-in was. The break-in was the lame idea of G. Gordon Liddy, who once worked for the FBI and believed that a cloak-and-dagger approach to elections was very clever. The real message of the Watergate scandal is to be careful who you hire, because it only takes one moron to sink your ship. The narrative that Nixon planned the break-in, or at least had prior knowledge that it would take place, is completely false. Watergate prosecutor James Neal was sure that Nixon had not known in advance of the break-in. As evidence, he cited conversation taped on June 23rd between the president and his chief of staff, H.R. Nixon said the first time he became aware of the name Watergate was on a Sunday in Florida when he looked at the front page of the Miami Herald. Nixon said that whoever came up with the idea of breaking into the office was a complete idiot. Senator Sam Ervin, an old-fashioned Democrat from North Carolina who is best known for opposing any racial integration, chaired the Senate investigation into the Watergate break-in and suddenly became the hero of young liberals everywhere. The Democrats who run the media decided to broadcast the hearings live, the first such broadcasts ever. The circus was back in town. How exciting! After the Democrats failed to show that Nixon planned and carried out the burglary, or even had prior knowledge that it would take place, all they could prove was that he tried to cover up the fiasco. The articles of impeachment merely accused Nixon of trying to cover up the actions of some mavericks in his employment, which the Dems called obstruction of justice. Every president and governor in history has had to obscure or sugarcoat some foul-up committed by a staff member. If trying to cover up a Class 3 burglary organized by some low-ranking fools constitutes high crimes and misdemeanors, then there ought to have been many more impeachments throughout history than there have been. One of the most despicable cover-ups was Barack Obama's White House team writing a fairy tale about the horrific murder of Ambassador Stevens and 3 other brave Americans in Benghazi in 2012. Normally, the Secretary of State would make a statement about the death of an ambassador, but Hillary had plans to run for president and did not want to ruin her chances by peddling a huge lie. Thus, Obama's loyal lieutenant, lying Susan Rice, made the rounds on the Sunday morning talk shows to claim that a spontaneous demonstration over a YouTube video's portrayal of Muhammad had gotten out of hand. Obama and his inner circle knew perfectly well that the assault used military-grade weapons and was well organized and occurred on the anniversary of 9/11. There was no demonstration or video. Even when the facts started to seep through, the media never criticized Obama for lying or disrespecting Ambassador Stevens and the other 3 heroes. Sadly, the media always treats the cover-up-in-chief very gently when he happens to be a Dem. The Democrats who run Hollywood have always tried to shape how Americans view history. In 1976, All the President's Men was released, and in 2017, Mark Felt, the man who brought down the White House, was produced to reignite the scandal. In the 1976 film, Hal Holbrook portrays the shadowy informer in the parking garage, whose face is never fully seen, like some revered god, and who appears and then vanishes as if by magic. His deep, fatherly voice offers advice to the young knight on his quest. But in fact, Mark Felt already had established a relationship with Woodward, so there was no mystery. However, Hollywood wanted to create a dark and mysterious tone rather than show a brazen act of betraying the Bureau's oath of confidentiality. As embittered as Felt was about being passed over for promotion by Nixon, his voice would have revealed his anger rather than sounding like a fatherly mentor. At 2 hours and 18 minutes, the movie, composed of question and answer, followed by more question and answer, drags on like a wounded quail that refuses to die. Nevertheless, this political diatribe was predictably showered with 4 Academy Awards by the liberals in Hollywood. Politics has always been an important influence on show business. In the 2017 film, Mark Felt is portrayed by handsome 6'4" actor Liam Neeson, who resembles Felt in no way. The film depicts Felt as a caring husband who was always sensitive to his wife's needs. In real life, his wife divorced him and then later killed herself. The movie portrays Felt as a devoted father who spent quality time with his daughter. In truth, his daughter ran away from home, did not contact her parents for years, joined a commune, and gave birth to a baby out of wedlock. The movie shows Felt trying to block people from the White House from entering the director's office at the FBI building and accusing the White House of interfering with the FBI. However, federal law says the president is the official who names the new head of the FBI. Associate Director Felt does not. Moreover, Nixon was intent on cleaning out the rat's nest of illegal spying and blackmailing, which ought to have been cleaned out years earlier by Kennedy or Johnson. The movies and talk shows conveniently ignore Felt's background as an employee of the Democratic Party. After Felt graduated from the University of Idaho with mixed grades, he immediately moved to Washington to work for U.S. Senator James Pope, who of course was a Democrat, because Felt was always a political animal and totally devoted to the Democratic Party. He later worked for a second Democrat in the Senate, David Clark, writing press releases that he sent to newspapers. He enrolled in law school at George Washington University and earned unimpressive grades, but finally graduated. Eventually, he applied for a position at the FBI and was hired. The Washington Post is also completely devoted to the Democratic Party, as the Post itself declares publicly by its endorsements it has never endorsed a Republican candidate for the White House. Moreover, Bob Woodward said that he first met Mark Felt when the two of them were waiting in a reception area of the White House. As they conversed, they realized that they had some positions in common. They both hated the Republicans, and they especially detested Nixon. Felt gave his phone number to Woodward so that the two could communicate later. Felt fed Woodward information from FBI files on the criminal who shot presidential candidate George Wallace, and afterwards about the break-in at the Watergate complex. Revealing any information or material related to FBI files to unauthorized recipients without written authorization from the FBI is a clear violation of the confidentiality pledge that agents take as part of their employment agreement. Mark Felt's betrayal of the oath that he took when he joined the FBI adds to a string of FBI leaders who betrayed their oath and FBI leaders who have tried to interfere with an election. Most of the rank-and-file agents at the Bureau are simply detectives doing their job to solve crimes. However, all of the bosses are politicians to their core, which may explain why the FBI has skirted the Constitution and federal law often over the years. Philip Shannon of the New York Times reported on August 23, 2002, that the Foreign Intelligence Service Court, known as FISA Court, has identified more than 75 cases when it was misled by the Federal Bureau of Investigation in documents where the Bureau attempted to justify its needs for wiretaps and other electronic surveillance. Another scandal involved Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton, who had a private server in her mansion and used a private email account to send secret and top-secret material from the State Department in clear violation of federal law, specifically 18 U.S. Code 1924 regarding the unauthorized removal and retention of classified documents. Director James Comey announced 11 days before the election of 2016 that Hillary was under investigation for the email scandal. Then, 2 days prior to the election, he reversed himself completely and declared that she was not under investigation. Comey's indecisiveness and foggy judgment were disturbing. Senator Bernie Sanders, a Democrat from Vermont, predicted that the first action Clinton would take when she was elected would be to fire Comey. Yet when President Trump did fire Comey, the Democrats criticized him harshly and asserted that for political motives, Trump was interfering with the FBI. Predictably, Comey went on all the talk shows to condemn the Republican president. He could not, however, keep up with former CIA Director John Brennan, who denounced the Republican president as the new Satan and spit out so much hatred that he nearly went into seizures. Special Investigator Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, a senior FBI lawyer, carried on an adulterous affair and in their spare time fumed about Donald Trump's popularity, as many obscene and hate-filled email exchanges reveal. These email exchanges were made on an FBI cell phone during work hours. Also, when Strzok led the investigation into Hillary's misuse of an email server, he switched the labeling of her actions from grossly negligent, which could result in a criminal charge, to extremely careless, which could not result in a criminal charge. Why was he shielding Hillary? Strzok was even appointed to Robert Mueller's investigation into the alleged conspiracy between Trump and Putin to steal the 2016 election. However, Mueller had to kick him off the team after those embarrassing Trump is evil emails came to light. Strzok was fired for his actions as an FBI employee in August of 2018 by FBI Deputy Director David Bowditch. His dogged Page was also fired. Acting Director of the FBI Andy McCabe desperately wanted to destroy President Trump. McCabe opened 2 investigations of Trump, a criminal inquiry focusing on whether Trump obstructed justice by firing Comey, and a separate counterintelligence probe sought to determine whether the president was acting on behalf of the Russian government. McCabe was fired in March of 2018 by the Attorney General for misleading the Inspector General and the Office of Professional Responsibility, as well as leaking stories to the media. McCabe was then able to express his views more openly, so he published a book titled The Threat to tell people more fully how he felt about Republicans. In 2017, as the FBI bosses were desperately trying to tie Trump to Vladimir Putin, FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith altered an email from the CIA about Carter Page, who was an aide in the Trump campaign, in order to mislead the FISA court. Kleinsmith pled guilty in August of 2020 to the criminal charge and received a slap on the wrist. Christopher Wray, the current director of the FBI, which is how Americans spell KGB, heard stories about Hunter Biden's laptop and sent agents to interrogate the computer repairman in Wilmington and seize the laptop. Once the laptop was securely in the hands of the FBI, they sent a memo to the heads of social media platforms declaring that the Hunter Biden laptop story had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. The liberal heads of the social media platforms were happy to repress any stories about Hunter's laptop and to cancel any person who tried to discuss it. As close as the presidential election of 2020 was, the FBI's repression of the laptop story may well have made the difference in the outcome. Nothing is more egregious than the FBI and media's interference in fair elections. Their threat to democracy must be recognized as the great danger that it is and crushed, and convicted criminal Mark Felt and Washington Post propagandist Woodward and Bernstein should finally be seen for what they truly are.